How can I retire at 60 with $200,000 saved for retirement? That's what we're going to look at today on the Your Financial EKG YouTube channel. I've got a couple. They're both 60 years old. They have $200,000 in combined retirement savings, and they're asking the question, how can I retire? First, let's look at some averages and the medians for retirement savings from 45 to 65 so that you can see we might be retiring with $200,000 if we're among the averages. So let's look at this. Here is the Federal Reserve data, the average retirement savings. So let's look at ages 45 to 65. So ages 45 to 49, the average save for retirement is $148,000. Ages 50 to 54, the average save for retirement is $146,000. From ages 55 to 59, which is where we're going to be, $223,000 saved for retirement. And ages 60 to 64, $221,451. Now that's the averages, and averages are skewed because you've got a lot of large numbers at the top. You've got a lot of little numbers at the bottom. They add all those together, divide that out, and you get an average. But what I want to look at is the median, where they take that same list, they go right to the middle, and that gives a better overall statistical view of America. So let's look at the median save for retirement, because this is probably more in line with where you fall, where your neighbors fall, where your colleagues fall. Now, Americans aged 45 to 54, the median save for retirement is $100,000. Ages 55 to 64, the median is $134,000 saved for retirement. And ages 65 to 74, it's $164,000. So you see, we've got our work cut out for us if we want to retire. So I'm going to do the video today, how can I retire at 60 with $200,000? Now here's what we've got. We got Frank and Karen. Now Frank and Karen both live in Kentucky. They're 60 years old. And they want to retire. They want to fully retire. Now, they are still working. They're asking the question, how can I retire right now? Now, we're going to look at Social Security first. So if we take Social Security at 67 for both of them, Frank's going to get $2,470 a month, and Karen would get $2,200. Now, obviously, we could adjust this. Their full retirement age benefit is $2,470 for Frank, $2,200 for Karen. Now, if you take Social Security at 67, you're going to get 100% of your full retirement benefit. If you take it earlier, you're going to get a reduced benefit. So if you take it at 62, you're going to get 70% of your Social Security or your full retirement benefit. If you take it at 70, you're going to get 124% of your overall benefit. So you can see that here. If Frank takes it at 62, his Social Security would be $1,729. If Karen took it at 62, it would be $1,540. So as we're going through the can I retire scenario, we've got to ask ourselves, does it make sense to take Social Security at 62, 63, 64, 65, or 67? That's one of their main questions is, when do I need to claim Social Security benefits? Now, from a pension standpoint, there are no pensions. They're just regular workers, no pensions in this scenario. From an asset standpoint, we've got basically 4 accounts. We've got 3 TD Ameritrade accounts, of which we help Frank and Karen manage. We've got an IRA at TD Ameritrade for $125,000 under Frank. Karen has a Roth IRA at TD Ameritrade with us of $25,000. Karen has a traditional IRA at TD Ameritrade of $50,000, and they have a joint account in the UK Federal Credit Union of $25,000. So their total assets are $225,000. Now, we're going to use $200,000 for retirement, which we're asking the question, can I retire? How can I retire at 60 with $200,000? $25,000, their bank account money, is going to be excluded from this scenario because it's their emergency fund. Again, that's money that we want to use in an emergency, HVAC, roof, car, something that we need quick, easy cash for, and it's the most tax efficient. Doesn't mean it's going to sit in the bank and earn zero. It might be in a CD, might be in a high yield mutual fund, or a high yielding savings account, or a high yield money market account, something like that, that is safe, but it's going to give us some interest. All right. Now, they do have a home. It's worth $350,000 and it's paid off. So they are debt free, which is one of the reasons why they have less in retirement savings, because they put a lot of money towards their mortgage and they wanted to be debt free. Now, the rate of return we're going to run on the investments is 5%. I'm going to use 5% on the investments and 2% on the bank. Now, obviously, the bank could be higher than that, but we're just going to use 5% for the market. And the reason we're going to use 5% is because it's basically half of what the S&P 500 has done since the 1950s. If you add in inflation, the S&P's average about 8. Without inflation, it's 10. So we're going to go to 5 to be really conservative. We don't want to be too overly aggressive in this scenario. And they're really asking the question based on their assets, how much money can they spend? Because when we're doing a financial EKG for someone, and if you want a financial EKG or you want to talk to me, all that information is in the description below. But when we're doing an EKG for someone, we want to find out 2 main questions. Can I retire? And how long is my money going to last, right? Can I retire and will I run out of retirement income? Those are the main 2 questions. And then everything else will fall on the side of that. If we can retire and our money is going to last, what about Social Security? What about inflation? What about long-term care? What about sequence of return risk? How should my investments be allocated? What about everything that's going to give us the best delta, the best rate of return, the best percentage, the best optimal strategy to make our retirement dollars go the farthest? All right. So from an expense standpoint, this is where we've really had to do some work. Now, Frank and Karen live in Kentucky. It's a lower cost state. We've got expenses of $3,000. Okay, and let me show you how this works. We've got baseline expenses of $3,000. Inflation's at 3.27. They don't have any vacation built into this. They don't have any travel. They don't have any extras built into this. This is baseline. They're pretty simple people is what they said. They don't need a whole lot of extra money. So what we're looking at is just baseline expenses. There's no mortgage, so there's nothing built in here for debt. This is just living. And we're going to put inflation on this on a monthly basis, right? Because you understand that inflation's not annualized, it's monthly, right? Why do we look at the Fed every month to see what they're going to do with inflation? It's because it's a monthly thing, not an annual thing, right? Raspberries today are more expensive than they were yesterday, and they'll be more expensive tomorrow. And that's my favorite fruit, raspberries. So $3,000 is their expenses. Now they are asking, can we spend any more and how can we do that? And so that's something that we're going to have to work through in the financial EKG. From a tax standpoint, it's really important for them to understand taxes because a lot of their assets are pre-tax. So if we look at the year 2024 from a tax standpoint, we'll have distributions of $38,181. We'll have a standard deduction of $27,700. So that's taxable income of $10,991. So their federal tax is $1,099. You take that, you divide that into the 10,991, and they've got an effective tax rate of 2.84%. So their bracket is 10%, but their effective tax rate is 2.84. Now, I don't care about their bracket. I could give 2 hoots about what their bracket is. I want to care about what their projected federal effective rate is. And one of the things we're also going to look at is what happens if taxes go up? Because they're going to increase in the year 2026. So what if they go up 25%, which is a reversion back to the Obama era tax code, which is where we would go if the current tax code is not revised or updated, which is not necessarily a bad tax code. But so in 2024, they're at 2.84%. In 2026, they jump actually 2.83. Let's go to 2027. They're at 0. So actually their tax code's not too bad when it comes to running out of money and putting the taxes on top of that. And so now let's look at retirement. They've got $200,000 saved for retirement. How long's their money going to last? Well, the reason they were in a 0 tax bracket is because they out of money. And you can see this. 66 years old, we are out of money. This is not where we want to be. We started with $225 and we're out, right? There's our $3,000 in expenses. Here's Social Security kicking on at 67, but we're out of money. So let's look at this. Let's go back. Let's take Social Security a little earlier. What if we take Social Security at 62? Does that help us at all? So we go back to retirement. Look at that. Now here's something for you to really be thinking about, especially when it comes to claiming Social Security. Let me show you this again. Maybe you missed it. Come closer. Make sure you're paying attention. Let's go to income. Let's go to Social Security. Let's take Social Security at 67. Let's save it at 67. So now they're going to take Social Security at 67. Let's go to retirement. When are they out of money? I didn't hear you. 66. Retire at 60, we're out of money at 66. 6 years. What if we took Social Security early? Let's go back to that. Take Social Security at 62. Remember, we're taking it at 62, it's 70% of our full retirement benefit. So for them, that's $1,729 for Frank, $1,540 for Karen. Go back to retirement. Now wait a sec. We don't run out of money. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that the reason why we want to do a financial EKG? Isn't that reason enough to do a financial EKG to find out when are you going to run out of money? Because to them, they came to me saying, hey, we want to delay Social Security as long as possible. But when we're running the scenario, it doesn't make sense for them to take Social Security as late as possible. It actually makes the most sense for them to take Social Security early. Take it at 62. BJG Wentworth, this is my money and I want it now. Do that because it makes the most sense. And let me show you why. So we've got 2 years of pulling off that $3,000. Now, Social Security kicks in, and we actually have a positive cash flow for 1 year, and then boom, we never run out. We actually grow our assets because Social Security with its COLA is able to keep up with our expenses. So now, now I'm able to go back in Frank and Karen and say, let's talk about that travel you wanted to do. Let's go to expenses. And let's add in, now again, they're not big travelers, so for them, they don't care about going to Paris, France. They care about going to Panama City Beach, Hilton Head, Gulf Shores, Alabama, coming down here to Tampa to visit me. So let's throw some travel in. And what if we throw in, let's say $5,000 a year. Let me grab my calculator real quick. And let's say we do a $5,000 trip a year. That's $416 a month. We're going to leave inflation at 3.27%. Now there's 60, so let's say we do this for 20 years. Just because at 80, let's say they don't want to travel anymore. Okay? So we're going to do 20 years of travel. Now let's go back to retirement. Okay, now look at this. This is going to be a positive thing. Even though there's a red line here that says they're out of money at 91, this is a positive because now we've added in travel. We're going to actually take out more in expenses every month for travel, and we're out of money at 91, which for most people, they'd be like, hey, I'm good. I got to the mid 90s or early 90s. I'm good. Plus, you see this house right here, $479,000 house. They can do a reverse mortgage, which they call a HECM now, a home equity conversion mortgage, or they can sell the house and move into an independent living, assisted living, or with the kids. So we got options here, right? This is actually a really good scenario. And they're like, hey, we can go travel now. Again, another reason why we want to do the financial EKG. Now, here's the thing I want to look at though. We're taking Social Security early, which means we're making the money last for longer. We're going to start traveling a little bit, which is good. Now let's look at taxes again. Does that hurt our taxes taking Social Security early? Now look, let's go to 2026. No, we're actually in the zero tax bracket because and look at our Social Security. Taxable Social Security is at 0. Go to 2027. Taxable Social Security is 0. Remember, Social Security is taxed by what they call the provisional rate. You have a provisional income, and that determines how much of your Social Security is used in the computation of your taxes. And in their case, they don't fall into those brackets. So their gross income is $6,200. So not only are we able to retire at 60 with $200,000, we take Social Security early, and now our taxes are extremely low. So this is a really good scenario for these people that you might have thought in your mind, hey, this is not going to work out very well. They did some poor planning. If they have Social Security at pretty good rates and they only have $200,000 saved, they haven't done very well. But keep in mind, everybody's situation is their own situation. You don't know what your neighbor's gone through. You don't know the money they've had to spend to take care of an elderly parent, or you don't know what they've had to spend on health care for children. You don't know what they've had to go through and where they're at today. So don't judge people by where they're at based on what I'm doing on YouTube. Let's look at it and celebrate. Hey, we've got to retirement. We're going to get through retirement, and we are protecting ourselves, staying in retirement. Now, the last thing I want to look at, which is really important, which is something that I don't necessarily think I'm going to be able to fix for them, but it's something that we need to have conversations about, is long-term care. Long-term care is something that we don't necessarily like to talk about in my world. I don't like talking about morbid issues any more than you do. I don't want to talk about death. Don't want to talk about long-term care. I don't mind talking about taxes, but I don't want to talk about death. And if we look at this, we have an issue. If one of them goes into long-term care, and this is if Frank goes into long-term care, we're out of money pretty quick. Now, obviously, assisted living is about half this cost, and things would adjust in their plan. But long-term care is something they really need to be thinking about, and where their assets are at, because they have less amount of assets that, they're not going to go out and buy a long-term care insurance policy because, one, those are way too expensive, and two, it doesn't make sense. We need to start thinking about designating some assets for long-term care protection, whether that's in the market or outside of the market, because that is something that most people, 2 out of 3 individuals, are going to need some sort of care. Maybe not in a facility, but some sort of care. So that's something we've got to think about. And let's look at the market real quick, and then I'll get you guys out of here. So let's look at the market. Now, what we've got, this is our market scenario. And what we're able to do is take individualized randomized rates of return over here, which is like a Monte Carlo scenario. And then we're able to take what we're doing over here, and we're able to see the difference, just like you would in a Monte Carlo scenario, but it's broken down individually instead of just in like 1,000 different groupings all at once. Okay. So in this case, we want to see the negatives first in the market. That's called sequence of return risk. Sequence of return risk is simply that you walk into retirement and the market falls, crashes, stinks those first few years, right? Think 2000 to 2002. Think 2007 to 2009. Think 2022, and if 2023 is not positive, sequence of return risk, right? Multiple years of a down market, okay? So in this case, we're going to generate 4 years first, and we're going to see what happens to our assets here. Look at this. Based on that, we're out at 82 years old, which our scenarios got us out at 91. That's with, the travel being built in there. Generate it again. Now we've got a little bit less of a burden, but look at this down here. A little tougher. We're out at 80 again. All right, let's throw another randomized rate in there. Let's do 3 for the YouTube. Okay, so it's not too bad here. And we're out at 82. So in their case, sequence of return risk is being very important. Now remember, we're running them at a very, very low rate of return, 3.96%. So I would assume that the market's going to average more than 3.96%. But what the Monte Carlo what the Monte Carlo does for us is it allows us to say, hey, we're going to have to watch this on a quarterly and on an annual basis to make sure that we have your investments aligned correctly, the rate of return that you need to make this money last forever. And that's something that we get only in the EKG. We're able to look at that. People call me all the time and say, what should I be invested in? And I say, I don't know. We got to look at your EKG. Based on that, that's the way we should invest for retirement. Okay. So I hope this has helped. How can I retire at 60 with $200,000? Thank you so much for watching. God bless. Bye-bye. All right, I've got a couple. They're 61 and 60 years old. They have $375,000 saved for retirement. They're asking the question, can we retire? When can we retire? And how much money do we need saved to retire? That's what we're going to get in today. Me and Matt are going to go through a Your Financial EKG for you. Matt, let's go.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Welcome, everybody. This is Tom and Shannon. So Tom works for Georgia Pacific, and he is currently 61, wants to retire at 63. Shannon is working and wants to retire at 62. we did a plan for them. And the funny thing is, everything was fine. They were comfortable with it until Tom calls me a couple of months later and says, I lost my job. And then we had to go back and refigure a couple of additional scenarios, which is what we do to help our clients within a particular time frame. We did get a couple of things ironed out for him to make them comfortable going through retirement. So let's go through this. So we've got the income for Tom. Original plan is 113,000, wanting to retire at 63. So in 2026, Shannon was making $6,000 annually, wanted to retire in 2026, a couple of months later. On the Social Security side of things, they're both going to start their Social Security at the point that they retire. So we have this feature here. For those of you that watch the videos, you've seen this before. At full retirement age, Tom is here at 3,253. Shannon is here at 1,634. Now, if they take it early, as you realize, they're going to get a little bit of a haircut. So we'll see that reflected here, and we can adjust our time of when we want to take it. We can optimize it. There's a handful of things that we can do. In this scenario, we're just starting right off with the income because their concern was, I want to have a guaranteed stream of income. They were in fear for not having income.
Yeah, and keep in mind with Social Security, like Matt said, if you take it early, like at 62, if you're born after the year 1960, you get 70% of your benefit. Now, for each client, it's important that we go through the EKG to understand exactly when Social Security makes sense optimally for your plan, but also when it makes sense optimally personally. A lot of my clients have a fear about Social Security. Sometimes longevity is a concern. They say, hey, if I'm going to die early, or if my parents didn't live past their 80s, I want to take as much benefit as I possibly can now. Or they'll look at the fiscal deficit and say, hey, I see that we're going to be $20 trillion in debt. I want to take Social Security now. It's my money. I've paid into it. We also, in certain situations, make it a game time decision. Matt and I will look at a client and say, hey, listen, you've got about 2, 3, 4 years before you get to Social Security. I don't know what the stock market's going to do between now and then. I don't know what your asset value is going to be. So we'll have to do a game time decision. Do we do a pinch hitter and call in Social Security when you retire? Or do we live off our investments because the market's done really well? So sometimes, Matt, like you've talked about, it's kind of this song and dance and saying, okay, how's the market done and when do we claim Social Security benefits?
So Tom and Shannon, neither one of them have a pension. Getting right back into it. Now, this is our income tab. We're going to jump over here to the asset tab, and we're going to take a look at where we are for assets. So here we can see, as Drew touched on earlier, at this point, we're at 378. And they're trying to get to retirement next year. So they are putting some money away. Here Tom has a 401k. This is the current employer. There's 54,000 in there. He is currently making contributions into his 401k. He has a previous employer 401k with 256,800, obviously not making contributions into that one. Shannon has a Roth IRA with 33,300, and she is making contributions into that. And then she also has a traditional IRA with 16,000, and then they have a joint savings account with 18,000. So that's kind of how they're situated now. They do own a home. The value of it is 293. And then as we can see down here, we don't have any annuities. If they did, this is where it would be listed.
So right here, if you can look, you see tax analysis where Matt's mouse pointer is. They've got 86% of their money is what we would call qualified. You might be thinking, what is qualified money? 86% of Tom and Shannon's money is pre-tax, meaning somebody is going to take some taxes from this. Now, they live in the great state of Texas. God bless Texas, right? Actually, the country of Texas, as we should say, right? So they won't have a state tax. But from a federal level, if you take 86% of their money, right? Scroll back up real quick, Matt, to the assets. Let's add this up. I'll just use my calculator. Makes it easy. We've got 54,000, 256,000. So, and then Shannon's got 16 there. So we've got $326,000 that is going to have tax associated with it. So let's just use the federal levels where we're at today. Let's say 20% of that, that's $65,000 in taxes. So essentially, you could say out of their total assets or out of their total IRA assets, 65,000 of that's Uncle Sam's. So we've got to navigate that for them when it comes to their income distributions, and we'll get to that.
So now we're going to take a peek at where we are with expenses. So here we're seeing their current monthly expenses are $5,094. They do have a mortgage on the home to be paid off in 2051. They do have taxes and insurance on the home. The baseline expenses, this number, for those of you who aren't familiar, is where we kind of include all of the things that are regular monthly items, don't really fluctuate that much. It's pretty consistent. It's not something that's going to get paid off like a car or a credit card. We'll list those items out individually. So we do have credit cards here of $500. Obviously, it's going to be paid off rather quickly. So then there it is. Health insurance is something that we will add in here. Sometimes people have an advantage plan. Sometimes they'll have a supplement. Sometimes the pension, if you happen to be an individual that has one, that can be included sometimes as the secondary. So we kind of list that out separately so that we can adjust those numbers. Yeah. Even though it's going to be a continual thing, like I just said, we don't wrap it necessarily into the baseline because it can change depending upon what we select.
One of the things that we do with our clients when it comes to their health insurance, especially, you remember you've got ACA, which is pre-65, and then you've got Medicare post-65. So Matt's talking post-65 Medicare. One of the things that we do for our clients is every year as they're going into their Medicare plan, we want to make sure, one, that if they're on a supplement, that their premiums are still the same, or if they do increase, we update their EKG for that increase. That's why we do the quarterly reviews with our clients for the EKG to make sure, hey, has your baseline expenses changed? Has your health insurance expenses changed? Have you spent more on travel, less on travel? Let's keep this updated because we want to make sure that we're on the right glide path. We're on the right track as we go through this. Now, listen, if you want a financial EKG, if you want to meet with Matt or myself, go to the description below. We've got a great link there. You just click that link. You get right on our calendar. Also, you could get the first 2 chapters of my new book for free. Go to the description, click on that, and you can download that and read that. But we talk about expenses in that book. The thing that is critical to your retirement is not necessarily how much money you have saved. We've talked about this on our channel a ton. It's not about how much you have saved, but it's how much you spend. You might have $1 million, but you might spend $100,000 a year and you are on a glide path to run out. Or you might have $300,000 and understand when you're going to claim Social Security, and you might spend another 25 on top of that, and you might never run out of money. It's all about cash flow. Cash is king, little k. Jesus is the real king. Cash is the little king. And so that's why we're looking at here on the expenses, and that's why we want to keep this updated.
That's a great point when you talk about the difference between someone with, more assets than someone else. But one of the biggest things is, like you were saying is how you spend it, or what your expenses are. And this is one area that's highlighted for a lot of clients don't realize what they're actually spending. So this is an eye-opener, kind of like a tool to help you focus for a lot of folks. Some folks are dead on. They use, spreadsheet or what have you, but it's good. We walk through it. It takes a little bit of time, but this is a helpful tool. So for these folks, we are including some travel for them as well. And typically, people aren't going to be traveling into their 90s. So we'll run that out at some point. And again, some of these numbers are just what we feel at this point. We're trying to shoot and be a little bit conservative. We want to make sure that we're getting in the fun and the enjoyment of retirement that we want. But we also want to be realistic and realize that, we're not traveling overseas every single year when you're 92 years old, right? For most people. Some people do. But we'll put a date in to end it here, just like we would for a credit card or a mortgage. So I'm just pointing that out to you.
The difference with the travel and the mortgage, though, is that we do put inflation on the travel because the cost of airline tickets today is different from cost of airline tickets 2 years from now. but the
Right.
mortgage never changes. Now your taxes and insurance inside the mortgage will change, and we usually separate that out. You can see that on line number 2 for Matt. That has inflation. But the mortgage, the amortization changes for principal and interest, but there's no inflation on that. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see when we're running through expenses with clients is they'll send me their spreadsheet and they'll put 3% inflation on everything. And I'm going, wait a sec, your mortgage, your credit card debt, your student loan debt, none of that has inflation on it. And so we've got to kind of work through this to say, what is your individualized inflation rate? You can see for Tom and Shannon Oprah up there, it's 2.21%. Well, that's their individualized inflation rate. It's not 3.26, which is the 114-year average. It's individualized for them. And that's what we're trying to get. With the Your Financial EKG, we're trying to say, what is the individualized inflation rate for this couple, for you, right? And we'll get to a point where we'll say, what's the rate of return you need to earn on your investments in order to make this last? It's not about others, it's about you. And that's why we call it a your plan.
Exactly. Okay. They also have life insurance here and a fifth wheel, including storage. So we've got those pieces in here, again, with end dates on them. Now we're going to come over here to our cash flow tab. This is where we can show a number of different things, money coming in, money going out. In this particular case, we're showing them purchasing a new car in 2029 and then another new car in 2036. Money going out. These are the way that they handle their finances is they typically will finance their vehicles. So we're showing them financing it over a period of time with a $500 payment, and then they'll just fit the car to match that particular amount. So here we are in our pre-retirement tab. Pre-retirement, meaning we haven't yet retired, we are still working. So as we go through here, again, we can see where we are today at this $378,000. And when we get to retirement, they're at $448,000. So we're almost at $450,000 at the point that we retire. And then at the top, what we're seeing, we're kind of cheating and looking into the next tab, which is showing us, hey, our money's going to last until we're 97 and 96.
That's pretty good.
It is pretty good.
They have $450,000 projected out with a 5% rate of return, right? We're doing a very low conservative rate of return on our investment. So with the contributions, with the market rate of return, now they could get more than that. We could get 7 or
4. Yeah, they're at 4.
So they're even more. So you're even being, you're like the tortoise, and I'm kind of like the tortoise with a little bit of a rocket because I go to 5 and you go to 4. So at $450,000, with the spending that we just went through, understanding when we're going to claim Social Security, they run out of money at 97 and 96. So this, I think what I love about the financial EKG and what I love about what we do is that you don't have to have $3 million. Susie Orman's like, you got to have $3 million to retire. And the guy working at Georgia Pacific, who's putting in the hours, who's putting in the long days, he's never going to have $3 million unless he wins the Georgia lottery or the Texas lottery or whatever. Well, for Tom and Shannon, they've worked hard. They've saved. They understand their spending. And before we get to the retirement tab to go through all this, we can see at $450,000, they're going to run out at 97 and 96. Plus, they'll still have Social Security on their house. So to me, I look at that and go, that gives me some confidence. That gives me some freedom to know that I'm going to be okay.
Just to carry on with that thought is that's making the assumption that both of them are living to 97 and 96. So if something was to happen to one or the other, things would change. And again, another benefit of the EKG is we can reflect that. So we can show, hey, what if this happened? What if I got sick and I was, long-term care for a period of time? Or what if I passed? Or what if she passed? One or the other. And that we can kind of pop through that here in a minute. So on this particular tab, what we're just showing is this is the highlights of the particular year. We're going to show December, the month of December is each one of these horizontal lines running across. Well, we can open this up, and in the full report, when you get your EKG, you see more of this. But here you can see, here's the month of January through the month of December for 2024. And then we can go through 2025. So here you can see as we're going along, we can keep clicking till we get to 2026. And now we're getting into retirement. So in this particular scenario with Tom and Shannon, we're actually retiring in August. And you can see that the income stops for Tom. Shannon's continues for 2 more months, and then hers stops. So the next, when we get from September, then we go into October. October is going to be on the actual retirement tab because now they're both retired. So here we have Tom's Social Security coming in because remember on the first tab, we turned his Social Security on at retirement. And then we're going to do the same thing for Shannon, but hers won't be reflected until the following month. So as we look across, we can see, what might be withheld and put, contributions into certain accounts. So here we can see what they are actually contributing, which we saw on our second tab. When we come across here, we've got our net monthly income. So on our income tab, we're actually kind of reflecting what you'll see on your tax return. It has the salaries coming in, and then it also has the contributions going into your accounts, the withholdings for taxes, Social Security, and Medicare.
Yep. And then what we can also, if we have clients who are super duper detailed and they'll send us their W-2 and we can actually put their deductions for health insurance, life insurance, disability, if you get that coming out of your paycheck, if your spouse gets life insurance through your work, if your spouse gets health insurance or any other benefits. Sometimes we have stock purchase plans, things that come out of your check, because what we're trying to do on that net monthly income in the pre-retirement and the retirement is get it as close to the penny as we possibly can, knowing that's what's going to help us grow these retirement assets.
Yeah, we don't want to have any extra money showing up in here that is being withheld, and because that would actually add to your dollars, which it's not if you're buying something extra like vision or dental or something along those lines. So great point.
And that's, again, we want to try to be, and Matt, let's flip over to the retirement tab so we can get to that to show, because what I want to do is we want to try to be as detailed as we possibly can. It's like going into the doctor and going for blood work, right? If you go for blood work, right, and they take the blood out of your arm and I get the emails from LabCorp and I'm looking at them all and I'm like, I don't know what this is. Like, I don't understand. And I'm like Googling it. Next thing I know, I've got like a brain tumor, right? Because I'm like dying because my potassium's too high or something. But like you go through these blood works and you want the doctor, like when he reads it or she reads it, my doctor's a she, you want it to be as detailed as possible. And that's what we're looking at here is we're saying, okay, your triglycerides are this, and that is exactly what it means. Your potassium is here. I don't know anything else about blood work, but that's exactly because we want to make sure your body is working. And that's what we want for your finances too. It's the same thing. You don't want to work with an advisor, or you don't want to go into your retirement going, you know what? I'm going to be okay. I'm going to make it. I'm going to put my head in the sand and we'll be all right. It's like going to the doctor and he goes, well, hey, Matt, you look like you should be on Lipitor. And Matt's like, well, you didn't take my blood work. You didn't weigh me. You just thought, oh, he looks a little pudgy. He needs to be on cholesterol medicine. That's why we want to be detailed on this plan.
Yeah. So there's a couple different things when we're talking about the details. And I know you wanted to skip over to this page, but let me back up just for 1 second, because I think this is kind of important for some folks. When we look here, and this is going to highlight what we were talking about a minute ago about being specific with your income, is these green numbers here on our net monthly cash flow. This will reflect, obviously this is good, green, good, extra money coming in. We need to find a home for this. However, if at the end of the month, you look at this report and you go, hey, I don't have $1,700 extra every month, then we need to go back and maybe we need to look again at your expenses. Is there something that we're spending money on that we forgot? Because we need to include all of our expenses. If this number is red in our pre-retirement, then we need to be concerned that our expenses might be too high, because obviously we're pulling money from our investments even before we've retired, which could end up in a problem. Yeah. So there's a couple things that we go through here. We definitely would slow down when we see things like this. And if this is accurate and you go, oh, yeah, I'm actually taking the extra money and I put it into that other account, then we're okay. We need to reflect that. And we can certainly do that on our cash flow tab, and we can put the money from point A to point B. So just another detail of how specific the each EKG is and how beneficial it can be to help you realize where you are. So again, I'm showing them with a 4% return on the investments that are in the market. So fairly conservative number. And the first thing that we see, the red, right? Everybody looks at the red and they're like, hey, hang on, what's going on? I got red. But it is, like you said earlier, a good thing, 97, 96. So we're getting out there and it's telling us that we need 3.98%. And you might think to yourself, well, why is it red 3.98 if you're showing 4? Well, that's a great question. So when we come back here to our assets and we come down here to where we actually plugged in that 4%, well, right here, this bank, even though they have the savings that might be getting 4% right now, that's only until they retire. And that was in 2026. So after retirement, maybe that savings account, they don't have that opportunity to get 4. So we just cut it down to 2. What that means is now they're not earning 4% on everything, which is why it's telling us, hey, you know what? We need to get 3.98% to get us to 100.
100. Yeah, because the bank account, what we're looking at today is we have higher rates at the recording of this video, but we're assuming over time that CD rates are going to come down.
So again, just trying to be detailed, trying to make sure we're not assuming, hey, you're going to do 8 to 10% because you did that last year. It's going to be great. Have a nice life. That's not the way that we look at it.
Rainbows and unicorns are great. My daughter loves rainbows and unicorns, but Matt and I deal in more thunderstorms. And that's where we live. Now, I believe in being positive and I'm a very optimistic person, but when we're doing a financial plan for a client, when you're looking at your retirement, you want to say, and I say this all the time, if my retirement gets kicked in the shins, is it still going to last? If the market drops, and we'll go through the market tab here in just a second, but if the market goes down multiple years in a row, sequence of return risk, based on my income, based on my taxes, based on what I need in retirement, am I still going to be okay? And that's why and what you should do when you're projecting out your retirement is always, always, always go with a lower rate of return. I'll get people commenting on the channel and they'll say, well, Drew, I put all my money in JEPI and I get 9% a year. And I'm like, that's great. But last time I checked, all our eggs in one basket is not always the best thing to do, especially with an investment that's only been out since 2020. But anyway, I digress. Go ahead, Matt.
And not everybody's has the same risk tolerance. Some people can't stomach volatility, right? So here, now we're going to say, here's 2026, right? So now we're in retirement and we had 2026 on the last tab as well. But when we look at this one, all of these zeros is because this is our pre-retirement and now we're in, retirement. So here we're showing Tom starting his Social Security. And then here is Shannon showing her Social Security as we're going along. And then you'll notice there's no income. And this particular tab has turned to pension because we're in retirement, but there is no earned income coming in.
Yeah.
So here we're reflecting the same income previously because we want to show the total here for the net monthly income. But really what we're looking at as we're going along in retirement, it's only going to be this 15,000 for the remainder of the year here. Total, we're at 69,000 of net income for the year. The expenses are 59,000. So, the difference in those two numbers means that we're positive. Well, we've got, the green numbers here, which we looked at from before. Now that we're in retirement, we can see we are pulling from our investments. Now, if we look to the far right, this column says spendable assets. Spendable assets is the same number, the same accounts with the same values from our tab 2, which was the asset one. Here, we are going to be drawing down on these accounts. And one thing to pay attention to is we can draw from these accounts in different orders, a different withdrawal order. The way that this is situated right now is we are pulling from these qualified accounts first. The Roth is down here, and then we have another traditional IRA down here. Now, once we get done with setting this up, we would probably want to move the Roth down one more notch. Just depends on where we are and depends on what we're trying to do with taxes. But that gets more into the strategy of things. So we'll come back to that at a later point.
This video could be 15 hours long as we go through with client reviews. But for Tom and Shannon, as we're going through a quarterly review with them, we might say, okay, Tom, Shannon, you guys are retired. Hey, Shannon, that little IRA you got, why don't we try to convert that to a Roth IRA? And so we're drawing down Tom's 401k, or at this point, it would be an IRA because we've rolled it to an IRA. But Shannon's account will say, hey, Shannon, why don't we convert this to a Roth IRA, try to get that completely off the table and make that all tax-free. And then based on, where we're at with our income and how we're drawn, we may go to Tom the next year and say, hey, Tom, we converted Shannon 17. Now let's look at taking 15 to 20 of your old 401k. Let's roll that to a Roth IRA. Because again, with the national debt, where it's at, and we're looking at the year 2026, they're dying, let's assume, in the year 2059. So the year before they run out of money in 2059. Well, where's our national debt going to go? Where are taxes going to go? So as we're going through these reviews with clients, that's where we're implementing some more of the intricate strategies. The first thing you want to figure out when you're trying to retire is, listen, can I retire? Am I going to be okay? That's what everybody wants to know. Can I retire and will I run out of money? Then once we figure that out, then we can go, okay, let's do the tax planning. Let's do the Roth conversion. Let's do the withdrawal order. Let's look at your legacy and your charitable giving and all of that. And then we go through even more detail.
And a great point with what you're just saying is when we have our initial conversation with you, we're going to find out what's important to you. So as we're going through, the order in which we address things might be different from client to client based on what is actually important. So what Drew was just talking about, it might not be that important to you to look at a Roth. Maybe it is. The Roth is something that can be highlighted when we look at our RMD tab, the required minimum distribution tab, and it'll kind of tell us, hey, you know what? We're being forced to take income. Maybe we need to look at that. So that might be higher on the list once we determine, hey, is my money going to last? Because if the money doesn't last and the money's going to run out at age 79, we're not really that concerned with converting to a Roth at this point. We need to be focused on how can we make that money last? So high level, looking at this particular page, which again, we are on the retirement tab here, so we can see that. And what we'll see, just kind of looking over all of these confusing looking numbers, is there's a group of numbers here, $500. There's another $500 here. These are just the little buckets where we are withdrawing monthly cash flows going out, see the negative number, for our vehicles. So when we go and put things into our cash flows, you're going to see it show up and then it's going to turn on and turn off. So it's going to be very specific to what we're doing. And it doesn't mean when we make a plan, hey, it's October in 2029, we need to go down and buy a car. It just means, hey, we're trying to put that money in because we know we're going to need another vehicle. So we want to show the expense going out. We want to show the tax repercussion in your numbers for that particular year. And maybe if we're planning on doing Roth conversions, maybe we're grabbing that money and instead of doing a conversion, we'll just use that for the car at that point. There's a lot of different ways to peel the onion, if you will. Looking through here, obviously everything is working out as we're going along, but you can see the spendable asset column is dropping as we're going along. And that's because of the red here in our net monthly cash flow, because that's what we need in order to put gas in the minivan. So going on down the line, we can see that at some point, these numbers start to change. So we drop off here in 2040. There's a reduction in our expenses. So obviously we can see, oh, well, you know what? The car was just paid for. So now the number drops back down. And then as we go along, we get into like here, 2050, 2051, it drops pretty significantly. What happens here? Well, that's the house being paid off. So those things are reflected in our report here at the end.
So what concerns us, 2051 is they're 88 and 87 years old. But if you go over to the spendable assets there, they've got only $23,229 in spendable assets at 88 and 87. Your most vulnerable time in life, right? You don't want to go work at Walmart as a greeter. Again, nothing wrong with Walmart. I got a lot of clients that work there, and my wife's mom actually worked at Sam's Club. But what we're trying to say is you don't want to go work at that age. So what we need to do for Tom and Shannon, and Matt's going to go to this next scenario. Go click on scenarios real quick at the very top. Well, we want to show, so Tom and Shannon were really concerned about guaranteed income because they don't have pensions, and they've got a lower asset value later in life. So they're saying we need cash flow that's guaranteed to never run out. So even if our assets go away, our cash flow is going to be there. So we have to go to our toolbox and say, what can give us a guaranteed income? Now click on that scenario number 2. For them, go to assets. For them, Tom's going to work a little bit of part-time, but we're also going to add in an annuity. And the reason we're going to do the annuity is not because we're trying to sell this person an annuity. I don't care if we use an annuity or not. Matt doesn't care. But for them, they said, we want guaranteed income. And the only thing out there, and you can Google it all you want, that offers guaranteed income outside of Social Security pension is an annuity. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put $200,000 into an annuity to give them guaranteed income. Now, it could be more, it could be less for your situation. But what we're trying to say is, you might go to the doctor and one of your main concerns might be a loss of movement in your joints or something. Your doctor might say, well, in order to alleviate this, you need to start taking some turmeric. So this is us saying, okay, this is your turmeric. If you want to do it, great. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. We'll find another route that will bring you some confidence in your retirement.
And this page right here is showing exactly what you were just describing. So taking the 200,000, which is the number that we're showing, pulling it from the Fidelity 401k and taking that number and plugging it in down here into that annuity, which says income benefit base here. We can see that when we're on the asset tab here, it says 256,000. Down here on the annuity line, it's actually showing a 0 on account value because we haven't actually moved the funds in, but it does show the start date of when we're going to start taking that income, and we can project it to be whatever date we would like. So that is reflected out here. We can see here is that annuity starting to kick in at this point.
Now, and look at what they did to their spendable assets retirement fund analysis. Actually, at 101 at 100, there's money left in the accounts. Now, keep in mind, Tom's going to work a little bit of part-time. He's a guy that doesn't like to sit down. And so he's going to go work at Lowe's a little bit. And we just said Lowe's, but he's a very handy guy. He can do whatever he wants. But adding in the guaranteed income is giving them some confidence knowing, hey, we're going to have assets later in our life. And it's more about cash flow at that point.
We kind of have our income coming in and we have our expenses. So you'll see that there is income, even though the expenses and our dollars might run out. And here we get pretty tight in our 80s. Again, we were tight as it was. But what we wanted to make sure of for them was that there was the guaranteed income amount coming in. So their net monthly income here, as we see it, is showing up right along, and that's perfect. And it's because it's Social Security and because it's the annuity, we have a comfort with that. So the comfort that you see here versus our expenses, assuming our expenses stay the same, and if we're shooting slightly high on our expenses, making sure we're covering everything, get the cars in there and the vacations in there and the health insurance, we can always round up as opposed to trying to hit the exact number. On the return side, we want to shoot slightly lower. But again, here we have the income number, which is guaranteed more than the account value or more than the expense side of things, which allows this number to grow because we go back into the green at the end of each month at this section. So that's going to help them. Even if these accounts went to 0, they do have the income because now it's guaranteed. And then they, on the expense side, assuming it stays the same, they're going to be okay. Now, the protected asset, you might see this number and go, hey, there's another $300,000-$400,000 there. That is the money that is in their house. So the money that's from the house is here. They would have to sell the house in order to gather those assets. And likely at that point in time, they would not be able to live in the same type of place that they're in for that amount of money, just because of the inflation on housing and stuff like that.
What we're trying to do with Tom and Shannon is just get a plan that gets us to a starting point, gives them confidence as they go over the next few years before they step into retirement, and allows us as the financial advisors to create a baseline and then work with that baseline. Are these plans perfect? No. Is the stock market perfect? Is inflation perfect? No. But what we've done is we've created the baseline that we can start working with. Tom and Shannon might get to 63 years old and they might say, hey, we can't retire because of this, and this. Something might have changed. And as we're adjusting it, they might have to work a little longer. Tom said he's going to work at Lowe's. But for you and your individualized plan, we want to have a baseline, somewhere to start. And then from there, we can adjust as time. The worst thing is we go at 65 years old, we go, hey, we're going to retire. And then all of a sudden we can't. At least for Tom and Shannon, we now know, hey, this is what has to happen for us to get to where we want to be. And if we don't, we know what steps we need to take. When do we need to claim Social Security? Do I need to work a little bit part-time? Should we cut out expenses? And that is what formulates the full Your Financial EKG. And listen, if you want to meet with us, go to the description below, click on the calendar link, get on our calendar. Let's build out a Your Financial EKG for you. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for watching Matt and I. We hope you've enjoyed it. God bless. Bye-bye. Can I retire at 61 with $375,000 saved for retirement? That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to look at two distinct rates of return. We're going to look at a 4% rate of return on our investments, and we're going to look at a 5% rate of return on our investments. And we're going to look at claiming Social Security. Does it make sense to claim Social Security at 67, earning 4% a year, earning 5% a year? How about claiming Social Security at 62, earning 4% a year, earning 5% a year? Which strategy makes the most sense for this couple? We're going to do it on the board first, then we're going to get into the software and we're going to put all of the variables together to get this couple to retirement, through retirement, and protect their ability to stay in retirement. So let's look at this strategy right now. We've got Stephen and Sharon. Stephen and Sharon are the same age. They're both 61 years old. They've got $375,000 in retirement savings spread out amongst various IRAs, Roth IRAs, and some bank account money. And they've got $4,200 in monthly expenses. Now, they also have a home that's worth $475,000. It's not included on the board. We're going to include that in the software. The board is the foundation to the plan. The software is the more intricate details. That's the Your Financial EKG. Now, they've got $375,000 saved for retirement. Keep in mind, the average save for retirement at 60 is $221,000. The median save for retirement at 60 is $89,000. And experts say once you get to age 60, you need to have about 8 times your salary saved for retirement. So $221,000 is the average. $89,000 is the median, and we need 8 times our salary at 60 saved for retirement. Now, this couple has $375,000 saved for retirement. So they are ahead of the average save for retirement at 60. So here are our two strategies we're going to look at first. Remember, claiming Social Security is a big part of this overall plan. Remember, if they claim Social Security at 67, they're going to get 100% of their full retirement benefits. If either of them claim Social Security at 62, they're going to get 70% of their full retirement benefit. Or if they wait till 70, they're going to get 124% of their full retirement benefit. Now, you can claim at any time between 62 and 70, 63, 64, 65, 66, 68, 69, and 70. But we're going to look at 62 and 67 for this example. So we've got age 61 for both of them. We've got $375,000 saved for retirement. And here's what I want you to notice. We're going to take Social Security at 67 in both of these scenarios, and we have two distinct rates of return. We're going to look at a 4% rate of return on the left, okay, on my left, and we're going to look at a 5% rate of return on my right, okay? Now, what rate of return means, this is how your money is earning in the market. So their $375,000 in retirement savings is earning something, invested somewhere, and we have to project out some sort of earnings so that we can do a retirement planning scenario. So I usually project out 6%, but I'm getting a lot of comments, people saying, hey, Drew, 6%'s too high. Now remember, the stock market has averaged 10% the last 50 years. It's averaged 15% over the last decade, but it's 8% the last 50 years with inflation. And I always go to 6. I go 2% behind the average. I feel like that's a little bit more conservative, but a lot of people, and I do read my comments, want me to go even more conservative. So that's what we're going to do today on the video. So we've got $375,000 saved for retirement. We're going to earn 4% a year, and our inflation rate is going to be 3%. Now, I am not going to budge on inflation. Now, I know a lot of people comment and they say, you don't know about inflation. It's 6, 7, 4, 5 out there right now. Yes, I know that. But we're looking over a 20 and 30 year retirement period. If you look at the last time we had inflation, 1968 to 1985, there were some high numbers. But if you look at the average for 30 years, it came back to the mean. It's called a reversion to the mean, and that's 3.27% over the last 109 years. So I'm going to use 3% for inflation. Now, we're going to start at 61. We're going to take $4,200 per month out of our retirement savings. We're going to put a 3% inflation rate on this money from 61 to 67, earning 4%. At 67, Stephen and Sharon are going to have $61,017 in retirement savings. So over like a 6-year period, they take out a lot of money because they're only earning 4% and they need $4,200 per month in retirement income. That's tough for me. That's really, really tough for me as a financial advisor to say that's a good plan. But again, let's keep going. So at 67, they're both going to claim Social Security. So we've got Social Security right here, and we've got our expenses right here. Now, I did not set this up to be like this. This is just how it happened. Inflation on $4,200 for 6 years grows to $5,200. So now their expenses are $5,200. Their Social Security at 67 equals $5,200. I did not plan that. I am not smart enough to plan that. Now, what that means is for a little while, they're at a zero, meaning they don't need any money off their investments because Social Security covers everything. But keep in mind, these expenses have inflation. So that inflation is going to grow, and they're only earning 4%. Now, from 67 to 77, their money grows from $61,000 a year, $61,000 in retirement savings to $63,652. And as you can see, they're out of money at 86. They're at zero at 86. This is a tough thing for me to say, yeah, this makes sense for you to retire, because they're taking out so much money between ages 61 and 67. They're not earning enough to keep up with inflation and also with what they're pulling out. Think about if they had an emergency. They had an air conditioner or a hurricane in Florida or needed a new car. This plan would go off the rails pretty quick. So now let's go to 5%. Does 5% make it any better? Remember, we're asking the question, can I retire at 61? 5% is our rate of return and claiming Social Security at 67. All right. So $4,200 is our expenses. Again, all else being equal, 5% is our rate of return. So it's a 1% increase from 4 to 5. Inflation's going to stay the same. From 61 to 67, our $375,000 in retirement savings goes to $74,214. So it's a little higher. You can see that a 1% increase over that 6 years gets us about from 61 to 74,000. Still not great. Okay, still a pretty shaky plan. It's not on I call it the rock. I want to build our retirement plan on a rock, right? Retire on confident knowledge. I like the story that Jesus told, the man who built his house on the rock. When the wind blew and the rains came and the hurricane came, the house was still standing. We want to do the same thing with our retirement plan. We want to build it on a rock, okay? I live in Florida. Our foundations are concrete, not sand, because if a hurricane comes through and you on sand, you gone, all right? Now, at 67, they'll have $74,214. Again, we're getting a 5% rate of return. This is our rate of return, and here's inflation. So our expenses are $5,200, and our Social Security is $5,200, which means we have a zero that we have to take out at the beginning, but we also have inflation. So as time goes on through this decade from 67 to 77, this zero will go up. They will need more money. And again, they'll probably have a healthcare expense. They'll have an emergency expense. They'll have something they have to spend money on. The $4,200 does include fun, so we can strip that away a little bit if we need to, but it's not something we necessarily want to do. We don't want to go into retirement and say, okay, now you got to live on a budget and you can't have fun. No, that's what you do when you're my age, when you're trying to save for retirement. That's when you eat pork and beans, not when you get to retirement. So at 77, they have $90,037. So you can see there's a bigger difference, $27,000 difference there, but they're out at 89. Okay, now what have we looked at? We've looked at a 4% rate of return, and we've looked at a 5% rate of return, and we've looked at claiming Social Security at 67, and this plan does not go over well. But what if we claim Social Security at 62? Did I just say that? Are you allowed to claim Social Security at 62 if you're a financial advisor? Are you allowed to tell people to do that? I don't know. Not if you read Forbes, not if you read Investopedia, what the experts say. Let's go look at it and see if it makes sense for Steven and Sharon. Can I retire at 61 years old with $375,000 saved for retirement and claim Social Security early? Did I say that out loud? Are we allowed to claim Social Security early? Am I allowed to give you that advice as a financial advisor? Well, let's look at it. So we've got Steve and Sharon. They're 61 years old. They've got $375,000 saved for retirement. And we're going to look at two distinct scenarios. 4% rate of return over here and a 5% rate of return over here. And they're going to claim Social Security at 62 years old. Why are we going to claim Social Security at 62? Because when we claim Social Security at 67, when we go through the projections, 4%, 5%, whatever, they run out of money early. So let's look at claiming Social Security early to see if they can retire, and does that elongate their retirement income. You ready? I have lost my marker. Oh, here it is. Found it. Okay, so 61 years old, we're going to earn a 4% rate of return. So our money that's in the market is going to earn 4%. We're going to have 3% inflation. That's just the expenses are going to get a 3% inflation rate. And we've got $4,200 in expenses. Now, $375 over 1 year, taking out $4,200 a month, earning 4%. Our money goes from $375 to $341,572. And it's actually more like 18 months. It's not a full year because of their birthdays. So that's why there's a little bit of an expansion there. But we're 62 years old. We're going to start claiming Social Security. We're still going to earn 4% as a rate of return. Inflation's still 3%, but you can see our expenses have grown from $4,200 to $4,420, and now our Social Security kicks on. So it's 62 when we're claiming, both of them, Stephen and Sharon, so they're going to get 70% of their full retirement benefit. If they had waited till 67, they would get 100% of their full retirement benefit. But in that case, they would run out of money, retirement income, a lot sooner. So with this retirement planning scenario, we're going to take it early. So our expenses are $4,420, Social Security is $3,640. That means we have $780 that we have to pull out of our investments on a monthly basis, plus inflation. Now, from 62 to 72, our $341 goes to $343. So we're down about $1,000, right? A little over $1,000, which is really good. We're 72 years old. We've got $340,000. Now at 72, our expenses have gone from $4,420 to $6,097. Okay, so that's our expenses. They're getting inflation, right? We have 3% inflation. We've got a 4% rate of return. Remember, we're using a low rate of return because I read the comments and a lot of y'all been saying that you don't like my 6% rate of return. You'd rather have 4 or 5. So let's do it. Let's look at 4. So $6,097 is our expenses. Social Security with its COLA has grown to $46.96, which means we need $1,400 a month off of our money. Our $340 goes to $195 over the decade between 72 and 82, and we're out of money at 89. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good plan right there. Out of money at 89. Now, there's some variables we got to look at, and we're going to look at that in the software. One of the variables in this scenario is what if we lose a spouse? Because if you lose a spouse, if both of you are on Social Security, whether you're married or you're living together and you're not married, you just have a partner. If there's 2 Social Securities and one of you dies, we're going to lose a Social Security. Now, if you are married, the higher of the 2 Social Securities will stay and the lower will go away. If you are not married and you both are relying on your Social Securities for daily living, you're going to get to keep your Social Security and your partner's goes away. So it's very important to have a plan for Social Security, especially if we lose one of you early. Okay, that's a variable we need to look at. We also need to look at taxes. And we need to look at some market fluctuations. Not a geometric return. This is what they call a geometric 4% rate of return. I want to look at plus 14, negative 15, plus 4, negative 10, plus 20, negative 3. What does that do? Especially if we have sequence of return risk. Sequence of return risk is the risk that you step into retirement and you get punched in the face right away, right? Mike Tyson, he says that everybody wants to fight till you get punched in the nose. That's sequence of return risk in retirement. Everybody wants to get retired till you get punched in the nose and the market drops. Boom, boom, boom. The first 3 years you're in retirement. Now you got a bloody nose. What are you going to do? All right. So we're going to show that in the software. Let's look at this. 5% rate of return claiming Social Security at 62. So our rate of return is 5%. Inflation's 3. We have $375,000. We have $4,200 in expenses. After 1 year, our money goes to $347,167. It's more like 18 months because of when they claim Social Security based on their dates of birth. Now, from 62 to 72, we got a 5% rate of return. Our expenses have stayed the same. Remember, $4,420, $3,640 Social Security, because we're claiming it early, right? We're claiming it at 62. We're getting 70% of our full retirement benefit. But the difference is we're earning 5% and not 4%. So our 347 goes to 390. You see the difference there? Over a decade, it's like a $50,000 difference, earning 5% over 4%. All right, so at 72, we have 390, 311 in retirement savings. Now you can see our expenses have grown from 4,420 to 6,097. Our Social Security has grown to 4,696. Now, if you're wondering, the COLA for Social Security is 2.4%. That's the average since the 1970s when they started keeping up with the CPI for Social Security and giving COLA increases during the great inflation fight that we had from 68 to 85, which means $1,401 has to come off of the 390 for retirement income. Now remember, our rate of return is 5% and our inflation rate is 3%. So our expenses are the same. You see that? earning 4% or 5%, everything's equal. But look at the difference in earning 5% over 4%. At 82, I've got $330,000 versus 195, and I'm out at 92 versus out at 89. Now, keep in mind, we're on the board here. We can't really estimate using a whiteboard go-go year money, slow-go year, and no-go year, right? Because expenses historically in retirement go down by about 1.8% per year. Now, I can't account for long-term care or chronic health or all that stuff. So what we're trying to just say here is, does it make sense to claim Social Security early in this scenario? For Stephen and Sharon, it actually makes sense to claim Social Security early instead of taking it at 67. That's why you need a financial EKG to understand, when am I going to claim Social Security? And go into the description below and you can get in touch with me and we can go through your retirement plan to get you to retirement, through retirement, and protect your ability to stay in retirement. Now, let's take all this information and let's go to the software. All right, can I retire at 61 with $375,000 saved for retirement? We're going to do a Your Financial EKG for Stephen and Sharon. They are recently retired. They're asking the question, can we stay retired? And we're going to look at multiple different factors. We're going to look at the rates of return. We're going to look at claiming Social Security. We're going to look at inflation. We're going to look at taxes. We're going to look at market performance, long-term care, and a host of everything that goes into a Your Financial EKG. So you ready? Buckle up, Buttercup, because here we go. All right, so we have Stephen and Sharon Canfield. They are 61 years old, all right, and they're both retired. Now, Stephen's primary Social Security benefit, we're going to look at a couple different strategies on here, because what we can do within the software is his full retirement benefit at 67 is $3,000. Sharon is $2,200. So let's first look at claiming Social Security at 67. Let's go to full retirement age, because we want to try to get that 100% on our full retirement benefit if we possibly can. Here's our assets. So Stephen and Sharon both have IRAs, which they rolled over from 401ks. Stephen's has $175,000 in it. Sharon has $125,000 in hers. They both have Roth IRAs, which are right about $25,000. One's a little higher, one's a little lower, but it averages out at $25,000. And they have $25,000 in the bank. Now, their home is worth $425,000, and it's pretty close to being paid off. It'll be paid off here this year, so we're not going to include that in our expenses because that loan is going to go away. That's something you really want to think critically about, especially going into retirement, is your debt. If there is any way that you can get out of debt, whether that's home debt, credit card debt, student loan debt, whatever kind of debt you got, it's really important for you to be out of debt going into retirement, because debt is something that just weighs on your expenses because it is needed every single month, no matter what. And especially if you have credit card debt, which here in America is surpassing about $1 trillion in credit card debt among consumers, you don't want that going into retirement. You want to have a clean bill of health, your financial EKG, on your debt when you're going into retirement. Now, the portfolio, we're going to do a couple different rates of return. We're going to start with 4%. So we're going to look at a 4% rate of return on their money. Now, the bank gets a 2% rate of return. The house is growing at 1%. I can't tell you what real estate's going to grow out over the next 30 years, so that's why I put a 1% rate of return. If it's more than that, we'll high five and chest bump. But let's look at a 4% rate of return first, because that just kind of gives me this comfort level. Let's go real conservative, and then we can look at 5, 6, 7, 8%, whatever you want to look at, okay? Now, from an expense standpoint, our monthly expenses are $4,200. That's all in. That's with everything going on. That's $4,200 in expenses, okay? Cash flows, there's no cash flows. So this is if they had, a rental property they were selling, they had a wedding they were going to pay for. We don't have any of that. So let's go to taxes. So these individuals, Stephen and Sharon, they are in Maine. As you can see, 6.57 is the high state tax. Right now, let's go to 2024. Let's go to a full year. Their current federal tax is 5.24%. So it's pretty darn low, right? There's not a whole lot. See, the wages are at zero, though qualified contributions, taxable Social Security is at zero. Remember, taxable Social Security is provisional income, is how Social Security is calculated for tax purposes. They take 50% of your Social Security plus any kind of IRA income, ordinary income, any kind of interest or tax-free interest. They add all that together. They get provisional income. And then based on your provisional income is how much your Social Security is taxed, whether it's taxed at 85% for the computation of taxes or 50%. So for them, there's no taxable Social Security because they're not there yet, right? No pensions, a little bit of 1099 interest, but here's our other monthly withdrawals. So it keeps us very, very low. 5.24% is our effective tax rate. Super low. But what happens in the year 2026? Taxes are going to change. Taxes go up, right? So they're going to increase. So we need to look at this. We need to say, okay, taxes are going to increase in the year 2026. Let's increase it by 25%. That's falling back to the Obama era tax code. Now, I don't know what politicians are going to do in 2024, 2025. I can only go on what we have right now. So let's say it goes up 25%. So they're at 5.24 now. Let's go to 2027. See, it jumps to 7.31. Still not terrible. Okay, so we don't have any taxable Social Security in there yet. Go to 2030. We actually go back down to zero, which is actually really darn good because we kick on Social Security, which means that our Social Security is covering a lot of our expenses. So now that our taxable Social Security is not being calculated, they're in a pretty good tax place. But what's going to happen on their rate of return? Let's look at that. So we go to retirement, earning 4%. So you can see this from 61 to 67, we're not going to have Social Security. Okay, so everything's going to come out of our investments. So you see how our net monthly expenses are $42.80. Let me show you what this looks like. Let's go to a full year here. So you can see inflation on a monthly basis. See how it goes up? So we're not calculating this on an annual basis. We're calculating this on a monthly basis because inflation needs to be calculated monthly, not just annually. Now you can see here at 67, their Social Securities kick on. Their expenses are $51.91. They've got about a $9 gain, okay? But that doesn't last very long. If you look at 67, with inflation, see how it goes down to 9? Now let's go to the next year. Well, actually, we have a gain until November of 2030. And then we start having to pull out. So let's close this. And you can see at 86, we're out of money. Now, we still have the house, $549,000. It's paid for. So somewhere around here, we could do a reverse mortgage. We could sell the house, and this plan looks really good. Now, here's the thing we got to talk about that's really important to them. What happens if we lose one of them? What happens if Stephen passes away? So let's just say Stephen goes first because he's the male. Let's just say odds are. So let's end it. And let's say he passes at 80. So at 80, they're going to lose one of these Social Securities. They're going to lose Sharon's, right? She's the lower of the two Social Securities. Sharon's going to get Stephen's. So what we can do is we go here. We say Sharon, she's going to get a widow benefit at 80. We're going to end this at 80 for her because she's 67. They're both the same age. At 80, she's going to get his benefit, and we need to go calculate what that is real quick. At 80, at 80, his benefit, 7059. Okay, so let's go back. Social Security. Well, let me do it the easiest way here. Let me grab my calculator. 3,000. This is why you got to do it on the fly, guys. This is why you need an HP 10B2 Plus calculator. So 67's 13 years. All right, so 4177 with COLA increases is what Social Security. So you see what I did there? 3,000 is Stephen's Social Security. Stephen passes away, so Sharon inherits his Social Security. It's growing at 2.58% every year with COLA. So the 3,000 is now 4177. That's what she's getting. Okay, so we save this. We go back to retirement, and look at this. She's out of money at 81. So it goes pretty quick once we lose Social Security. Now, they do have the house, 522, 523. It's paid for, so she could sell the house, move in with the kids, or do a reverse mortgage or something like that. But for them, we've really got to have a plan for what happens if we lose one of you. You see, we can't sprinkle pixie dust on every plan. I try to do that. Now, we have a board plan that we start with. Once we move from the board, we move into the software, because the software is going to get more intricate. It's going to get markets. It's going to get, what if we lose somebody? What about long-term care? So let's look at that. We're still earning 4% a year. Let's just say they're both going to be alive till 100. Let's look at long-term care. So in Maine, okay, in Maine, the current monthly cost of long-term care is $11,482. At 80, the future monthly cost would be $20,931. That's long-term care. That's full-on 24/7 care. Okay, now keep in mind, you've got assisted living, you've got home health aid. A lot more people do the home health than they do long-term care, but we're just looking at worst-case scenarios. So in this case, at 80, if Stephen has to go into long-term care, here's 4 years of care, we're out of money at 80. I mean, it doesn't last very long. So for them, we've got to do some adjusting within their plan. We've either got to, one, work longer, right? We can't retire. We got to work longer. Two, we got to throw in some cash flow. Like we got to have some part-time work or something, okay? Or three, we've got to earn more than 3.87% on our investments. Remember, we're showing a 4% rate of return. Let's look at a 5% rate of return. And you can do a combination of all that, right? You can earn a little bit more, hopefully earn a little bit more in your investments, but you can also work part-time. Maybe you work part-time for a few years. Let's look at that here in just a second. We'll see what happens when we earn 5%, and then we'll look at maybe adding in some part-time work. So we go to retirement. Now we're out at 88. It's getting better, but here's what I want to look at. We claim Social Security at 67. What are our investments at? We're at 71,008. You see how we went from 375 to 71,008 in just about a 7-year period? That doesn't make me feel good that our liquid assets are down about $300,000, $304,000 because of inflation, because of what we need. Doesn't leave a lot of room for emergencies. Even earning 5%, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So let's go back to, what do we want to do first? Let's go back to income. And let's see what happens if we change claiming Social Security. So now we're earning 5%. We're out of money still earlier than I want. But what if we claim Social Security early? So let's claim Social Security at 62. Save them both. So now we're claiming at 62. You see how there's a difference? Instead of 3,000, it's 2,100 for Stephen. Instead of 2,200, it's 1,540 for Sharon. Now keep in mind, if one of them passes away, when one of them passes away, the higher of the Social Security, the 2,100 is what will stay. So if you're claiming Social Security early, you've got to think about, if you're married, what if the spouse passes away? We need to maximize our Social Security. So it's something you've always got to be considering when you're doing the planning. That's why we do the EKGs. And listen, if you want an EKG, get in the description below and let's talk. If your advisor's not talking to you about this, why not? Okay? So 5%, we're going to take Social Security early. Look at this, we get to 92. So we're at 92. So we feel really good about this. Let's go to 62. Look at this, 347. When do we start to really go down in assets? Look at this, 88, 89 is when we really start to just see a deceleration or an acceleration in our spending because of inflation on our expenses. Are you going to be spending that much? Probably not if you're healthy. But what about long-term care? So we go to long-term care. And we're out at 81. So long-term care is a big, unknown in this situation. This might be something where I'm telling them we need to do some long-term care planning, not long-term care insurance, but we need to be doing some serious planning. If one of them or both of them, unfortunately, both of them, if they both need long-term care, we need to be talking about that, right? So let's look at one more thing. I want to look at the market. Because what we've been showing is just a 5% rate of return. But you and me both know that the market doesn't move like that. It doesn't just go up 5%, 5%, 5%. It looks like a roller coaster. So let's look at that within their plan, and let's throw a sequence of return risk in there first. So here's our geometric average. It's 4.5% because we have money in the market and money in the bank. And we're going to do a little bit of sequence of return risk first. So we're going to throw in some negative returns first, then positive returns. And these are just randomized returns. We're just throwing in randomized returns like a Monte Carlo scenario. Let's see what happens. Now, look at this. They're out of money at 98. Isn't that great? So our scenario, just the 5%, has them out at 92. But in this scenario, they're out at 98. Now let's go back. Let's generate another randomized rate of return. Again, we want to show negatives first. We want to kick them in the teeth, right? Mike Tyson, punch them in the nose first. So let's see what this looks like. Now they're out at 94. So this is something when we look at market returns, it's still lining up pretty good. The one thing I would like to do you have 2 minutes? Give me 2 minutes. Let's add in a little bit of income. Let's say that Steven works part-time. Let's just say he makes $1,200 a month. It's $14,000 a year, 61, right? He's keeping below the subsidy for health insurance, so we're staying below that. We're going to stay below the Social Security tax limit. So if you are on Social Security, you are not allowed to earn, unless you're at full retirement age, over about $20,000 a year. Now that is indexed for inflation every year, but we're going to keep him below that. So we're just going to earn a part-time job. He lives in Maine. Maybe he knows a dock. Maybe he can go get some lobster. What do you guys like? Lobster rolls in Maine, right? That's the big thing. Listen, if you're from Maine, leave it in the comment section. We eat your lobster here in Florida. Okay, we like it. So let's say he earns $1,200 a month. Now, either one of them could work. I don't care. I just picked Steven out of the air, okay? So we're going to do this, and let's say we do this until Medicare age. So it's 61, 2027. Is that Medicare? Yeah, let's go to Medicare at 65. So we're going to earn some money working part-time till Medicare. Remember, we're out of money at 92. What's that do? Now it gets us to 95, an extra 3 years. Feeling better about that. And look at this. The rate of return needed to avoid a shortfall now is only 5.8%, meaning their investments only have to earn 5.8. We're running at 4.5, right? Because they have some bank money in there. 5% of their investments in the market are earning 5%. Their bank earns 2, so it's 4.5% overall. So if we can get from 4.5 to 5.8, we're looking really good. So it's an EKG. If you're getting into retirement, you don't want to wonder if this is going to work. Let's put some confidence in it. Get with me in the description below. Let's put together your EKG. So I hope this has helped. Hey, listen, our total catalog of videos is on the YouTube page. Go back there, check out all our different scenarios. Can I retire with 150,000? Can I retire with 400? How about 500? How about $1 million? Can I retire? Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. God bless. Bye-bye. I'm 61. I have $150,000 saved for retirement. I'm asking the question, when can I retire? That's what we're going to look at today on the Your Financial EKG YouTube channel. I've got a great scenario for you. I've got a 61-year-old flight attendant. She's got $150,000 in her 401k. She's saying, hey, Drew, when can I retire? And how much retirement income can I expect when I get there? So let's go to the details of this, because I think you're going to be surprised from where we got this. All right, so here we go. This came from Market Watch, and here's the question. I'm a 61-year-old flight attendant. I want to retire at 70. I'll have a $900 per month pension and will get Social Security, but only have $150,000 in my 401k. Should I get professional help? And here's some of the details. I think I need a financial advisor. I'm 61 and plan on retiring at 70. I'm a flight attendant and I'll receive a pension of just over $900 per month. I have a 401k with a balance of $150,000, so $150,000 saved for retirement. She's going to receive Social Security when she retires. I've never had a financial planner, and I hope it's not too late to start with one. It is never too late to start with one, no matter what age you are. My goal is to increase my 401k and just use common sense with my spending. I'm single with no children. Any advice or recommendations on who to contact or how to proceed would be appreciated. Well, here you go. I'm going to help you out. 61-year-old with $150,000 saved for retirement. Let's go through the EKG today to see exactly what you need to do. So we have Sherry, the attendant. Sherry's a flight attendant, so I just put attendant as her last name. Now, we don't have a couple pieces of important information. The first piece of important information we don't have is what is Sherry's current salary. So what I did was a simple Google search, the average salary for a flight attendant today, and that's $85,000 with a 1% projected increase. So we're going to give her an $85,000 salary, which is the average salary for flight attendants. Now, she's 61 years old and she wants to retire at 70. So we have 9 years before we retire. Now, the second piece of information we did not have was what her Social Security benefit would be at 70 or at 67 or at any age. So let me show you exactly what I did. I went to SSA.gov and I went to the Social Security Quick Calculator. And this is a way that you can calculate your Social Security benefit in today's dollars and in inflated dollars. Keep in mind, Social Security has a cost of living adjustment of 2.58%. So what we're trying to look at is based on her salary, so $85,000 is her salary, and we put her date of birth in as January 1st of 1962. That gets us to 61 years old. What is her Social Security benefit going to be? Now, we can use today's dollars and we can use inflated dollars. I'm just going to use today's dollars to be more conservative, right? Cost of living adjustments with Social Security aren't necessarily guaranteed. The average COLA right now is 2.58%, which I believe will continue on. I'm not telling you COLA's not going to be there, but I'm going to be a little bit more conservative in my planning. So if we hit submit request, it's going to show us right here retirement benefits. So 2301 would be her retirement benefit at 67. At 62, it would be 1526, and at 70, it would be 2970. Now, you might be saying, Drew, what's it matter 62, 67, 70? Well, if you claim Social Security benefits at 62, you're going to get 70% of your full retirement benefit. If you claim Social Security at 67, if you wait till your full retirement date, you're going to get 100% of your full retirement benefits. And if you claim at 70, you're going to get 124% of your full retirement benefits. Now, that's for everyone who was born after 1960. Sherry was, she's 61. So that's what we need to plug into the EKG. Now, we can also do things like you can check out what inflated dollars would be. So if we hit inflated dollars, that's putting a cost of living adjustment on things. And you can see 2635 is at 67, which is about $300 more, and 3707 at 70. So let's go back to the EKG and let me show you what we did. We put in 2301. That's the benefit at full retirement age. That's at 67. Now, if she claims at 62, she would get 1611. If we claimed at 63, we're getting 1726. And obviously down here at 70, it's 2853. Now, inflated dollars looks a lot better. That would be 3,700. But again, I'm just trying to be conservative in my planning. Now, we also know that Sherry gets a pension. So we can put in pension down here, and it's going to be $900 a month. Now, she didn't say her start age, so we're just going to say it starts when she retires at 70. Now, what we need to look at is two things. Does it make sense to retire at 70? Can she retire sooner than that? We also want to look at, once she gets to full retirement age of 67, would it make sense for her to take Social Security benefits at that age, help that supplement her income to invest that more for retirement. You know, I don't know. We got to get into all those figures. We don't want to take Social Security before 67, because if you take Social Security from ages 62 to 66 and you're still working, Social Security says, hey, if you make over a certain amount of money, right now it's $20,000, it goes up every year, they're going to take back $1 for every $2 you make over that income threshold. So she's making $85,000 a year. We do not want to take Social Security early and invest it. Don't listen to what people put in the comment section or those videos that say, take your Social Security at 62, invest it, keep working, you'll make more money. Actually, you'll probably lose money because taxes are going to go up, up, up. So let's look at this, and let's look at this in the real world scenario. So for Sherry, we've got two accounts. Now, she's got $150,000 in her 401k. She didn't tell us if she had any money in the bank. So we're just going to assume there's $5,000 in the bank. Okay, I'm not going to put $50,000 in the bank. I'm not going to put $100,000, just $5,000 in the bank. It could be more, it could be less. I don't know. I got to put something in there. Again, Sherry didn't give us all her information. Listen, Sherry, if you're watching this video, go to pearlwealthgroup.com, check us out, get in touch with me so I can update your EKG for you. We also are assuming that Sherry has a home worth about $300,000. We're going to assume that we're not going to have a mortgage payment for Sherry. Because her savings is $150,000 in her 401k, I'm going to assume that she has paid off her house. She's been really focused on paying off her house so she doesn't have a mortgage, okay? Now, rate of return. We're going to assume from now until retirement, she's going to get a 6% rate of return on her investments. Okay, 1% on the house, but 6% on the money that's in the 401k. At retirement, we're going to go to a 4% rate of return. You see that? So 6 before, 4 after. The reason we're going to downshift to 4% is because once you get into retirement, your investments need to shift from growth, growth, growth to a little bit more of capital preservation, income, things like that. So we're going to downshift her overall investments once we get there. There's another piece of information we didn't have, and that's her monthly expenses. So how do we figure out what the average monthly expenses are? So what I did was I went to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and I found what the average expenditures are for people ages 55 to 64. And I just pulled from there. So here's expenses. That's that light blue, that Carolina blue color. And then this dark blue, this Kentucky blue, that's the income number. So average income between ages 55 and 64 is $74,182. The average expenditures is $55,892, and they're looking at this for household income. Now, a household could be one, a household could be two. I have clients, and we section those by households. Well, she could be a single household or a double household. So I don't know, again, expense-wise. So what I'm going to do is we're going to use $4,000 as her expenses. We can go down to $3,500, $3,000. I'll show you that. But we're going to start with $4,000. And we're going to have an inflation rate of 3.27% on that $4,000 in perpetuity, right? Now, we want to be accurate on inflation. Keep in mind, let's say I had more information on Sherry. I'll back up. Hold on. That's CPI. I don't want to show you CPI. Let's say we had more information on Sherry. So let's assume that we don't have a mortgage, but let's say that her current expenses, because she's working and having to travel to the airport and all that stuff, is $4,000. But when she retires, we're going to retire in 9 years. So we're at 2023 right now. So that would be what? 2032. So let's say we retire 2032. So in 2032, our expenses, because we're not working, we're not having to travel for gas, there's not other expenses, let's say they're going to go down to $3,000 a month. So now we can adjust and say, okay, starting in 2032, forever, our expenses are $3,000 a month. So we have these buckets of expenses, right? Or these tranches where expenses are. Now, our inflation rate's still 3.27%. That's the average inflation rate for the last 109 years. That's what we're going to use for the expenses, especially when we're trying to calculate how much those expenses are going to be. But let's say that she had a fixed payment. Let's say she had a mortgage, and the mortgage was $1,000 a month, okay? and her inflation on her mortgage is 0, right? 30-year mortgage, it's not going to go up every year. Your taxes and your insurance will go up, but the actual principal and interest payment is the same. The amount that goes to principal and interest changes every year, right? More goes to principal as time goes on, but the actual payment doesn't change. So what we can look at is if we put that in as 0, look, now our inflation rate goes down 2.62%. That is why it's really important to understand what your average inflation rate is. It might be different, right? My inflation rate is going to be different from your inflation rate. I'm buying diapers right now. I got 3 kids. We homeschool them. They hear all the time. They eating out of the fridge constantly. So our inflation rate's different from your inflation rate, right? 2 retirees living in the same state, the same city, on the same block could have 2 separate inflation rates. And that's why it's really important to make sure you are looking at your expenses and calculate them based on your needs, okay? Don't use averages, use your need. So for her, we're using $4,000. So $4,000 is what we're looking at. Inflation rate's 3.27%. So let's go to pre-retirement. Let's see where we're gonna be when we get to retirement. So we're 61 years old. Our gross monthly salary, this is gross, before taxes, is $7,083. Our monthly contribution is $1,274. So this is what's going into the 401k, and this is the match. Now, what I did for the 401k was I did a simple contribution, just what the average contribution for 401k is. I did the average match, which is 3%. So if you go to Fidelity, if you do Fidelity says that the average match for them right here, for example, 401k plan might use the following step. Your employer matches dollar for dollar until you've contributed 3% of your salary. Then they match 50 cents up to 2%. Okay. That's the average for Fidelity. So I'm just going to use 3% to keep it simple. Okay. So Fidelity sees most matches at 3% and then 50 cents on the dollar up to 2%. I'm just going to use 3%. So there's our match. There's our company contribution, and here's our match, all right? So our net monthly income, here's salary, there's 401k, there's taxes, right? You still got to pay taxes. There's FICA taxes, Social Security, and there's Medicare. So our net monthly income is $4,799, and here's our net monthly expenses, which means we have a positive cash flow. So you see this, how there's a positive cash flow? Let's go to 2024. So you see this positive cash flow here? That's positive. There's $8,951 left over at the end of the year based on the scenario. Now, obviously, things come up. Your HVAC might go out. You might need a new car, might need a new roof, might have a medical situation where you need to pay more money. Dentist, good, don't even get me started on how much teeth cost. It's ridiculous. So we need to look at this and say, hey, we've got a good positive cash flow. Are there months? Are there years where some of this money, this extra cash flow, can be repurposed maybe into a brokerage account for Sherry, just a freedom fund? Money can flow into that and she can use that for her retirement income when needed. And that's something you can be thinking about. If you're doing a budget, how much money's coming in? How much money's going out, and am I red or green? Because what a budget is going to be able to tell you is, do I have money left over at the end of each month, or is there more month left over at the end of my money? Because if there's more money left over at the end of the month, then you have the ability to start stocking away things for an emergency fund. You can start stocking away money into a brokerage account. Maybe you can put more into your 401k. Maybe you can start a Roth IRA contribution, but it all starts with your budget. And so that's what we're wanting to look at here is, where is she at? Now, let's go to retirement. Again, Sherry's going to retire at 70. She already knows she needs to work to save more money. So at 70, we have our pension of $900. That's what was told to us in the Market Watch article. Social Security's $2,853. We're kicking it on at 70. That's 124% of her full retirement benefit. We have net monthly income, Social Security, and pension. And then there's our expenses, $5,387. Those expenses have had inflation on them. So we need $1,634 from our investments on a monthly basis. Now, she's been putting money into her 401k. She's been saving, and that means we have $418,000 at 70. So we went from $150 to $418. And you can see how the money essentially at 85 runs out. So some of the questions are, first of all, Sherry, how do you feel about that? She's single, no kids. She said that in the Market Watch article. So we know we have this house here, this protected asset. that we can possibly use for a reverse mortgage, or what they call a home equity conversion mortgage. We can take some money out of the house, we could sell the house, downsize. With a $300,000 house in today's market, that's probably tough. So a reverse mortgage would give an influx of $100,000 to $150,000 more into this plan. Does that make sense? We also need to know, Sherry, what are your exact expenses? Will anything fall off? Because if we're able to get an exact number on your expenses, then we might be able to make this money last longer, because we know, hey, I'm not going to be traveling as much when I'm 75 or 80. Okay, the expenses go down. Hey, Drew, this is, I'm going to have Medicare, not regular health insurance, so I can take that out. So that's a cheaper cost once I get to 70. Again, it's per person, per individual household. So if we go back to the expenses, let's just go back. And again, I showed you the Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? This is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is income and expenditures by age. So we're looking at 55 to 64. So let's just say for this household, it's $3,000. So that's taking out $12,000. So for Sherry, we're going to back out $1,000. What's that do to her retirement? Look at this. At 100, she's got $200,000. We go back to expenses. Let's say it's $3,500. We go back. Look at that, at 92, we're at zero. So at $4,000, we're out at 85. At 3,500, we're out at 92. And at 3,000, we have $200,000 left at 100. So that's why it's really important to understand your expenses. You see how $1,000 can vary how much money you're going to have left at the end of your life? And I'm not saying she's going to live to 100. I'm just trying to calculate out, as a financial advisor, how can we be a little bit conservative and protective over Sherry? She's single, right? You might be single. It's me, myself, and I. And so as a single person, you've got to understand, hey, everything's on me. There's nobody that's coming in to help me. I want to make sure the plan fits me. All right, so let's look at one final thing. So obviously, we're out of money at 85. We feel okay about this plan because we can use the reverse mortgage, the home equity conversion mortgage on our house. But let's go to Redline Solves here. Let's see what the software says when we should take Social Security. So it's saying, hey, take it at 70 years old. So now we know that we're taking Social Security at the optimal time based on her current scenario. Let's go back to the estimated benefits. So this is the inflated benefits, right? Remember we were doing SSA.gov. We're looking at what her Social Security would be. What if we changed it to 30? What if we changed her 67 to 2635, which means at 70, she get 3707 with inflation. So let's go back. Let's go to income. Let's go to calculator. And let's change this to, what was it, 2600? Yeah, 2635. Let's save that. So at 70, we're going to get 3267. Now what happens at retirement? Look at that. That's an extra 3 years, just following the COLA increases. So that's really good. So for Sherry, hey Sherry, if you're watching this, you've got a lot of things that are right. You're doing a lot of good stuff. Maybe there's a couple things that we need to look at, but I hope this video has helped you get to retirement, through retirement, and protect your ability to stay there. God bless. Bye-bye.